The problem with the way you think. Think of one thing you strongly believe is true. Don't say it out loud, just pick something. Now, imagine someone walks up to you and gives you evidence that proves you're wrong. Would you change your mind? Most people would say yes. But here's the uncomfortable part. You probably don't know how you would react until it actually happens. Because your brain has a strange habit. It doesn't always look for what's true. Sometimes it looks for what's familiar. It looks for information that fits what you already believe. And when something challenges you, your first instinct may not be to investigate it. It may be to defend yourself. That's why two intelligent people can look at the exact same information and walk away believing completely different things. And neither one necessarily feels like they're being irrational. They both feel like they're seeing reality clearly. So what is actually happening inside your mind? Let's say you believe something strongly. Maybe you believe that a certain habit is the key to success. Maybe you believe a particular person is trustworthy. Maybe you believe you're simply not good at something. Now imagine you come across a piece of information that supports your belief. Your brain notices it. It feels satisfying. You think, see, I knew it. But then you encounter something that contradicts it. Suddenly, the rules change. You start looking for problems with the evidence. Maybe the source isn't reliable. Maybe there's an exception. Maybe they misunderstood something. Maybe there's another explanation. And sometimes those objections are completely reasonable. But sometimes you're not investigating the evidence anymore. You're protecting the conclusion you already chose. This is one of the reasons critical thinking is so difficult. Because the hardest thing to question isn't information. It's yourself. And there's another problem. Being intelligent doesn't automatically protect you from this. In fact, intelligence can sometimes give you better tools for defending a bad conclusion. A person who isn't very good at reasoning might simply say, I don't believe you. But a very intelligent person can do something much more convincing. They can build an elaborate explanation for why they're right. They can find 10 reasons to dismiss the evidence. They can win the argument and still be wrong. That's what makes critical thinking different from simply being smart. Being smart can help you find answers. Critical thinking helps you question whether you found the right answer. And this matters far beyond arguments. Imagine you're scrolling through your phone and see a claim you've never heard before. You read it once. It sounds convincing, so you believe it. Then you see another post saying the exact opposite. Now you're confused. But here's what most people do next. They don't investigate both claims from the beginning. They look for the one that feels more believable. Maybe it's written more confidently. Maybe the person has more followers. Maybe it agrees with what they already thought. Maybe it makes them angry. Maybe it makes them feel smart. But none of those things tell you whether it's true. Confidence isn't evidence. Popularity isn't evidence. And the fact that something feels right isn't evidence either. So how do you actually think critically? You start by doing something surprisingly difficult. You pause. Before accepting something, before rejecting something, before getting angry, before defending your position. Pause. Then ask, what exactly is being claimed? Not what do I feel about it? Not who said it. What exactly is the claim? Then ask, how do we know? What evidence supports it? Where did that evidence come from? And just as importantly, what evidence would prove me wrong? That last question changes everything. Because if there is absolutely nothing that could change your mind, you're no longer testing a belief. You're protecting it. A good critical thinker isn't someone who doubts everything. They don't automatically reject every claim. They also don't automatically believe everything. They hold an idea loosely enough to examine it. And there's one more habit that matters. Look for the explanation you don't want to be true. If you believe someone is a bad person, ask, what evidence would make me reconsider that? If you believe you're terrible at something, ask, am I actually terrible? Or am I simply inexperienced? If you believe you're right in an argument, ask, what is the strongest version of the other person's position? Not the stupid version. Not the version that's easiest to attack. The strongest version. Because if you can understand an opposing idea fairly, you can finally start evaluating it instead of fighting a version of it you invented. And this is where critical thinking becomes uncomfortable. Because sometimes, after examining everything, you discover that you were right. But sometimes, you discover that you weren't. And that's okay. Changing your mind isn't a failure of thinking. Sometimes it's the evidence that your thinking worked. The goal was never to become someone who is always right. That's impossible. The goal is to become someone who can recognize when they're wrong. So go back to the belief you chose at the beginning, that thing you felt certain about. Ask yourself one more time, what would actually change my mind? If you can answer that honestly, you've already started thinking differently. Because critical thinking isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to question the answers you already have. It's the ability to slow down when your brain wants to react, to examine evidence when your emotions want to decide, to consider another explanation when your ego wants to win, and sometimes to look at something you were completely certain about and quietly say, maybe I was wrong. That isn't weakness, that's thinking.